Okay.
And joining us now for more on this is the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Republican Congressman Mike McCaul. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for taking the time. I want to start with the official, if you will, and then talk a little bit of the personal. After the classified briefing that you moderated for House members, and after hearing from the IDF on CNN that reason dictates Hamas is holding the hostages underground, do you think the hostages can be recovered safely?
It's going to be very difficult, Caitlin. We're going to move into the sort of house-to-house rescue operation, not only to rescue hostages, but to kill the terrorists. And so this is the most dangerous part of the mission. It'll be very bloody, we anticipate. They use hostages as human shields. So they'll use them in the tunnels, they'll use them in the houses, the buildings. And they're very willing to give the hostages up to be sacrificed. Now, we do think they're holding the hostages to be in exchange for prisoners, Palestinian prisoners that the Israelis have. So that gives me some hope that it can be negotiated. I'm glad that our special operators are with the IDF right now and the FBI hostage rescue team. I think they can add a lot of assets on the ground to help them in this mission.
On the question or topic of prisoners in exchange for prisoners being held in Israel, a Hamas official based in Lebanon spoke to Russian TV, and he also said this. I want to read this for you. We have Palestinian prisoners in the U.S. who we want. We have Hamas members sentenced to life in prison in the United States. Do you know anything of this? I mean, would you support releasing any Hamas prisoner in the United States in order to get an American hostage back from Gaza?
Well, I don't like to incentivize more hostage taking. I've been critical of the latest swaps, like the ones that we had with Iran. We had 5 very dangerous Iran prisoners in the United States that were exchanged for 5 innocent Americans. But on top of that, Caitlin, was the lifting of the sanctions on $6 billion that would go into Iran, the largest state sponsor of terror. That greatly concerns me. We've seen what Iran's capable of. Their fingerprints are all over this, what's happening, what you're seeing on the screen right now. And I would hate to give them more resources to do more acts of terror like what you're seeing.
These are live pictures that we're looking at of Gaza. You're seeing more black plumes of smoke. We know Israel has started to conduct a large-scale strike operation ahead of the next stage, as they call it, which they're not obviously announcing what that is, to try to take out Hamas military infrastructure. Tony Blinken, Mr. Chairman, said today in his remarks when he was in Israel that one of the goals of his visit right now is to prevent this conflict from spreading. Do you think it can be contained? Do you think Blinken can do it?
That's my great hope. I brought that up in the classified briefing yesterday. I think our worst case nightmare scenario, Kate, is that this will escalate beyond the Gaza, beyond Hamas in the Gaza. It will escalate to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Remember, Hezbollah has 100,000 rockets at their disposal. That would entirely overload the Iron Dome. It's not capable of defending Israel from that amount of rockets. We're also worried about jihadist groups like in Syria. We have the Iran-backed Shia militia groups in Iraq. And then you have all sorts of jihadist groups. That is our worst nightmare, that we want to contain this conflict to the Gaza. But what you're seeing on the screen is the original command and control operations to take those out by strikes. And then the second phase will be going house to house to liberate hostages and kill terrorists. That's going to take not days, not weeks, but months. And I think the American people, and I think in Israel, people have to be prepared for that. And that would just give more time for our adversaries to react and respond to this. So I agree with the Secretary on that. I'm glad he's there. I'm really glad he embraced the music goers that were so viciously killed at that concert. He and I both have a love for music. We had that Peace Through Music event at the State Department, my bill that I passed. And I just, I was on that kibbutz down in South Israel
I was going
near
to ask
Gaza,
you about that. I was going to say your office actually sent me some images that you visited the kibbutz Kfar Aza last year. How does that impact you now, knowing the massacre that happened there?
It makes it personal. I was just there a year ago with the speaker, then Speaker McCarthy, and to see, I got a call the day after the invasion, if you will, of Hamas, to tell me that entire kibbutz had been annihilated, massacred. And the saddest thing, Kate, was that daycare center that I saw with all the children and the babies that they were, and they just had undergone a 4,500 rocket attack from Hamas a month prior to that, by the way. But to find out that the daycare center had also been invaded, and they killed all the children and beheaded them, beheaded babies. This shows you how vicious they are. And when Netanyahu says they're just like ISIS, when they behead children and babies, I think they are.
There is some lack of clarity now on how it's hard to even work through it on who was beheaded, if there is confirmation that it involved children. I say that only for accuracy of reporting, not to at all diminish that children were massacred there, and children were massacred everywhere. And Tony Blinken himself said that it is akin to the worst of ISIS. Even Tony Blinken saying that, what he sees coming from Hamas. An interesting thing I also want to ask you about is the Saudi press is reporting that MBS actually spoke with the president of Iran yesterday about the Hamas attack. This is interesting to me in terms of the question of containment. What role do you think MBS and Saudi Arabia could play in preventing this from spreading further and from bringing an end to Hamas?
Well, I think Turkey could have a role in that. I think the Qataris could have a role in that. Qatar, of course, the Saudis have a role in terms of their connection to the Palestinians. And so I think that is something that I think we need to bring all diplomacy to bear here. And I'm glad Secretary Blinken is over there to meet with our partners who can bring a diplomatic end to this nightmare. And I think, as you and I talked about, prevent a future escalation of this massacre that's taking place.
And it is important to note what you said, that we could be looking at months here of conflict, months to try to bring Hamas down and to get these hostages out, hopefully safely and alive. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks for having me.
Of course.